The rain drummed steadily against the concrete as Henry pulled his worn jacket tighter around his shoulders. For 3 years, this street corner had been his world, a small patch of sidewalk outside a busy intersection where thousands of people passed by daily, their eyes carefully avoiding his presence. At 52, Henry had become invisible, just another face among the city's forgotten. Before we continue with this incredible story, drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. We love connecting with viewers from all around the world. But on this particular Tuesday evening, everything would change for Henry in ways he could never imagine. The rush hour traffic was heavier than usual. Commuters hurried past, umbrellas bobbing like black flowers in the fading light. Henry sat quietly on his cardboard mat, watching the familiar rhythm of the city unfold before him. He'd learned to read the patterns: the businessman who always checked his phone at the crosswalk, the elderly woman who fed pigeons every evening, the young mother who walked her daughter home from dance class. It was this mother and daughter who caught his attention now. 8-year-old Emma skipped beside her mother, her pink backpack bouncing with each step, completely absorbed in the colorful stickers on her water bottle. As they approached the crosswalk, Emma's mother was distracted by an urgent phone call from work, her voice rising with stress about a deadline that couldn't wait. The light turned green. The mother stepped forward, still talking, but Emma had stopped to pick up a dropped sticker that had fallen from her collection. She bent down right at the edge of the crosswalk, completely unaware of the delivery truck that was running the red light, its driver frantically texting and not seeing the small figure in his path. Henry saw it all unfold in slow motion. The truck bearing down, the little girl still crouched at the curb, the mother 10 feet ahead and oblivious to the danger. In that split second, 3 years of being invisible didn't matter. 3 years of society's indifference evaporated. There was only one thing that mattered: a child's life hung in the balance. Without hesitation, Henry launched himself from his corner. His legs, weakened by malnutrition and nights sleeping on concrete, carried him faster than they had in years. He reached Emma just as the truck's bumper was mere feet away, scooping her up and hurling her toward the sidewalk with all his strength. The impact was devastating. The truck struck Henry with a sickening thud, sending him flying 20 feet down the road. Emma landed safely on the sidewalk, scraped but alive, crying for her mother who had just turned to see the horrific scene unfold. Within minutes, the intersection was a chaos of sirens and flashing lights. Paramedics worked frantically over Henry's broken body while police redirected traffic and witnesses gave their accounts with shaking voices. Emma's mother, Catherine Morrison, held her daughter tightly, both of them in shock but unharmed. By the time Henry was loaded into the ambulance, unconscious and fighting for his life, someone had already started filming. The footage, grainy but clear enough to show the heroic rescue, was uploaded to social media within the hour. By midnight, it had been shared thousands of times. By morning, news outlets across the nation were running the story of the homeless man who risked everything to save a stranger's child. But Henry knew none of this. For 5 days, he lay unconscious in the trauma ward of General Hospital, his body battered but slowly healing. He had no identification, no emergency contacts, no insurance. To the hospital staff, he was just another John Doe, a homeless man who would be discharged to the streets as soon as he was stable. What the media didn't initially report was the identity of the little girl Henry had saved. Catherine Morrison had deliberately kept her daughter's name out of the news, wanting to protect Emma from the media frenzy. But Catherine herself was no ordinary mother. At 34, she was the widow of tech mogul James Morrison and had inherited a fortune worth over $2 billion. More importantly, she had a heart that had been forever changed by loss and was now moved by unprecedented gratitude. Catherine had tried visiting Henry once while he was unconscious, but the hospital's security and media presence made it impossible. She watched the news coverage from her penthouse apartment, seeing how the story had captured the nation's imagination. Fundraising pages appeared overnight. Strangers shared their own stories of homelessness and heroism. The video had been viewed over 50 million times. But Catherine also noticed something troubling. As the initial wave of public sympathy began to fade, so did the attention on Henry's recovery. The news cycle moved on to other stories. The fundraising slowed, and Henry remained alone in that hospital bed, with no one to advocate for his care or his future. On the 6th day, when Henry finally opened his eyes, Catherine was there waiting for him. "You saved my daughter's life," were the first words Henry heard as consciousness slowly returned. Through his blurred vision, He saw a woman in an elegant coat sitting beside his bed, her eyes red from crying. Henry tried to speak, but his throat was raw from the breathing tube. Catherine offered him water and waited patiently as he gathered his strength. "The little girl," he finally managed to whisper. "Is she okay?" "She's perfect. Thanks to you." Catherine's voice broke. "You gave her back to me. You gave me everything." Over the next hour, as Henry's head cleared, Catherine told him about the media storm, the fundraising efforts, and the outpouring of support from strangers. She also told him something else, something that would change his life forever. "I want to help you," she said simply. "Not just with medical bills or a place to stay. I want to help you rebuild your life, if you'll let me." As Henry recovered and began to trust Catherine, his story slowly emerged. He hadn't always been homeless. In fact, his past was filled with service and heroism that made his recent actions seem almost inevitable. Sergeant Henry Collins had served 2 tours in Afghanistan, earning commendations for bravery and leadership. After his military service, he'd returned home to work as a firefighter, saving lives and serving his community for over a decade. He'd been married to his high school sweetheart, Sarah, and they'd been trying to start a family. But tragedy struck in devastating waves. Sarah died in a car accident on her way to a fertility appointment. 6 months later, Henry's elderly parents were killed in a house fire, a fire he arrived at as a first responder, unable to save them despite his training and experience. The guilt and grief consumed him. He began drinking, lost his job, and eventually lost his home. For 3 years, he'd lived on the streets, convinced he was worthless, that he'd failed everyone who'd ever mattered to him. Until one rainy evening when a little girl needed saving, and muscle memory took over where hope had died. Catherine didn't just offer Henry charity, she offered him partnership. She'd been struggling with how to honor her late husband's legacy through their foundation, and Henry's story had shown her a new direction. Together, they would create a program to help homeless veterans, providing not just shelter and food, but comprehensive support to rebuild lives. Henry became the face and heart of the Morrison Foundation's new initiative. His story, from war hero to homeless man to lifesaver to advocate, resonated with millions. Speaking engagements poured in. Book deals were offered. But more importantly, real change began happening. Within 6 months, the foundation had helped over 200 homeless veterans find housing, job training, and mental health support. Henry himself had moved into a modest apartment, begun therapy to address his trauma and grief, and found new purpose in helping others who'd lost their way as he had. But success often brings unexpected challenges. As Henry's story spread and his influence grew, it caught the attention of someone from his past who wasn't pleased with his newfound prominence. Derek Manning had been Henry's supervisor at the fire department, the one who'd fired him for showing up drunk to work. Derek had covered up his own drinking problem by throwing Henry under the bus, and now he watched with growing resentment as his former subordinate was being hailed as a hero. Derek began reaching out to tabloid journalists, suggesting that Henry's heroic image was built on lies. He painted him as an unstable alcoholic who'd abandoned his duties when his community needed him most. The smear campaign threatened to undermine everything Henry and Catherine had built together. But Henry had learned something important in his journey from the streets to success. He was no longer facing his battles alone. Catherine stood by him, as did the hundreds of veterans whose lives had been changed by their program. When Derek's accusations surfaced, they were met not with silence, but with an outpouring of support from people who knew the real Henry Collins. More importantly, Henry faced the accusations honestly. In a public statement that went viral for its raw honesty, he acknowledged his past failures while standing firm in his commitment to help others avoid the same pitfalls. "I'm not a perfect man," he said. "I've made terrible mistakes and hurt people I cared about. But I've learned that our worst moments don't have to define us. Sometimes, the most broken people are the best equipped to help others heal." The smear campaign backfired spectacularly. Derek's own problems came to light, while Henry's honest response only strengthened public support for his work. 2 years after that rainy Tuesday evening, Henry stood on a stage accepting a national award for his work with homeless veterans. In the audience sat Catherine and Emma, now 10 years old and one of Henry's biggest supporters. The little girl who'd unknowingly changed his life by needing to be saved had become like family to him. As he looked out at the crowd, Henry thought about the power of a single moment to change everything. One act of selfless courage had not only saved a child's life, it had redeemed his own and given him the chance to save countless others. If this story moved you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our inspiring content. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for a second chance, and let us know in the comments what you thought about Henry's incredible journey. Until next time, remember, heroes come in all forms, and sometimes they're hiding in the most unexpected places.